Good evening. Welcome to Empower You this evening. It's good to see so many of you here. Welcome to those of you online. I just want to thank the board members that are here tonight. We have Barb Horowitz, Bill Rowe, our treasurer in the back, John O'Neill, Joe Platt, Nita Thomas. Got a good crew tonight. And Jay Grunke, our producer, also in the back, and Jay Regalno, of course, who is our leader, who will be up here later. I don't know how many of you were in the last class, the body snatchers. How many of you were here? I know Mal and Jude DeWitt was up here till the very end and would not let her leave. I think they were taking notes because I think they might be going to start their own business. I asked them later if that's what they were doing and they wouldn't admit it, but it was a fun class on body snatching back a long time ago. I just want to remind you, I haven't been doing that, but we're halfway through our classes. And before long, the board will be meeting for the spring. So if any of you have any class suggestions, please send them in to info@empoweryouamerica.org. Or you can hand me a note here in the studio if you're here, or you can send it to me at betty@empoweryouamerica.org. We do use your suggestions when we can. If you have a suggestion and you know a speaker, that's very helpful. If you don't, send it in anyway, because sometimes we are successful in finding somebody. We also are a free university. However, we are not without expenses, so we do accept donations. If you are registering online, there's a donate button on there where you can donate. If you go to our website, there's a donate button there. We do pass our little red buckets around in the studio when you're here. If you have $1 or $2 that you'd like to contribute, we certainly appreciate it. And if you're not somebody who likes to use those little buttons to donate, you can send a check to our physical address, which you will find on our website at empoweryou. I'm getting it mixed up tonight. empoweryouamerica.org. I also want to remind you, because a lot of you don't know it, once we've had a class, it is posted to the website within 24 hours. So if you happen to miss one that you wanted to see, you can go on the website and watch it. And next, I want to remind you with the microphones, if you're in the studio and you have a question and our speaker for the birds would like for you to hold your questions till the end of his presentation. If you would raise your hand, we will bring a microphone to you so that everyone, especially those online, can hear you. And if you're online and you have a question, just drop to the bottom of your screen to the Q&A button and type your question in there and we'll get it. Next week's, or Thursday, we have coping with dementia during the holidays. This is Teresa Youngstrom. She was with us, I'm going to say maybe at least 2 years ago. Had a lot of people here that was interested on that. I know all of you have heard how with being locked down for the last 1.5 years, 2 years, seems like 5 years to me, but it's been really hard on people that have mental health issues. It's been extremely hard on those with dementia and with the caregivers of those with dementia. And Teresa can be a tremendous help for you. So I would suggest that you come to that class. If you know somebody that's in that situation, let them know about it. Next Thursday, we're going to have American Marxism by Luke Perry. And I'm sure everybody here knows American Marxism, the book by Mark Levin. Unfortunately, Mark Levin's not going to be here, but Luke Perry's going to be just as good. And I've heard that book is really good. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. And then following next Thursday, we're going to have a Saturday class on homeschooling. There's been a lot of parents who have been unhappy with the public school system and they're thinking about homeschooling. They just really don't know what's involved. So if you know about anybody in that situation, tell them about this class, because this is the way to find out what it really takes to homeschool your children. And next, I'm going to have Dan come up and he's going to give away our door prizes.
Thank you, Betty. Mr. Roll, would you bring up the tickets? Betty, stick with me a minute. Help me out here. So, we've got such a detailed management structure here at Empower You. We've got our board, and then we've got Betty. Now, Betty is usually the tough one of the group. I'm kind of the easy mark. But Betty, I just can't understand why you gave Jude and Mel the week off next week. Where are they at? To go body snatching without, what are we going to do without them? I don't know. It's going to be tough. We'll miss you guys. Hope you have a great vacation. So a couple things I wanted to go over. Nita Thomas planned tonight's event. It's so good to have her back helping us. We miss having her here all the time. And so we got a few presents, a few gifts to give away tonight. And I wanted to start off with, I bought this gift. Betty's always saying, you got to buy more stuff to give away, more stuff. So I bought one. It was a little tricky. It was a Lego witch set for Halloween. And, I bought it, and then I went over to my grandkid who's 7, and he had all this Lego, and he said, Grandpa, let's put the Lego together. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And I knew none of you could do it. So I had a chance to meet a young lady on the way in who's 10. It says that this is for 10 years old. And I thought, for being such a trooper to come with somebody, I thought I would give this Lego witch to Liz. Let's give Liz a round of applause. Congratulations. Good luck with it, okay? Good luck. Better you than me. It's great to hear that Tim, our main speaker later, is going to give away the heated bird bath. What an incredible $100 value. And so let's draw for that here. Okay, this is like the big prize, everybody. I can't read these tickets. 7, they're not, is that 720? I think so. 720, anybody have 720? Right here, come on up. What a prize, well, can we leave it up there? What? Okay, Dave, thanks, congratulations. And then our online winner, since Betty did such a great job of talking about it, will be a copy. It's great to see so many people online tonight too. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to give away a copy of Mark Levin's American Marxism. We'll announce that at the end of the class who the winner is. So we'll let you know. So just a couple things I wanted to go over with you before we had our first speaker. So Thursday night, the first speaker will be Lieutenant Governor John Husted. Now, we sent out our first email about the Lieutenant Governor today, and I had many people express their displeasure with him speaking at Empower You. One of them is in the audience. I won't identify him, but he wasn't the person who's in the audience wasn't as colorful as Paul, who said, Husted is part of the problem we have here in Ohio. Why not just have DeWine here? These two stepped on our rights for the last 2 years. And then I had Mr. 1131. I will not be voting for John Husted again. He went along with our tyrant governor, Mike DeWine. I am not impressed with him being at Empower You. So Joe Platt, who's one of our most creative board members, for the last 4 years has talked to us about having a class on empowering high school students who don't want to go to college or shouldn't go to college to make other decisions with their career choice instead of just spending $20,000 and going to UC or $30,000 or $40,000. And when I was speaking with John Husted, he told me that that is really his main initiative as Lieutenant Governor, to work on education and to talk about workforce transformation under a program he calls Innovate Ohio. So I told the two people that responded, I didn't tell the other one, that at Empower You, what's so beautiful about it is hearing people talk about all sorts of subjects, whether you agree with them or whether you don't. And I think it'll be a great opportunity to hear the Lieutenant Governor Thursday, and I'm glad he's taking the time to come to Empower You. He'll be appearing virtually. And I will say about the Lieutenant Governor, I have not had good luck with the governor, but the Lieutenant Governor has listened to several things that we've spoken to him about critical race theory and other things. And in all honesty, this repeal of Resolution 20 probably had to do with him telling his appointees to vote against it, vote for it. And I think that's a great thing. So a couple other things. I'm really sorry to tell you, Vivek Ramaswamy called me Sunday and told me he had to cancel his class. That was going to be next Tuesday. Many of you remember Vivek was at a class with Ken Blackwell on May the 4th. That was the first time he spoke really anywhere in the area. He just said something had happened with his travel arrangements. He couldn't make it back here. So I'm really sorry Vivek won't be here. Really apologize. And just as bad as Vivek not being here, the Great Parks CEO, who has put forth a levy that would raise your taxes 107%, was supposed to be here Tuesday night to talk about the levy and answer your questions. Now, I really feel like I had to do a lot of tricks to get him to agree to appear. He did not want to come here at all. And he tried so many ways not to come here. And if I was looking at cat lives, you know, you say you get 9 cat lives, I think I might have used 3 just getting him here. So I feel terrible that you're not going to get a chance to hear from him about how you can justify increasing somebody's taxes 2 times. But I just urge you, if you live in Hamilton County, you need to look at that levy. You should understand it before you vote on it, and you should make sure your family understands it. Finally, I'm going to be introducing our first speaker. Thanks, Betty. And Tom Hagedorn is somebody that I got to know very, very well. And we planned the protest at the State Board of Education that happened on September the 23rd. Yeah. I got to tell you, it was one of the hardest things we ever did. I think I can say that for you, Tom. Is that fair? Yeah, it was tough, man. It really, really was tough. But we had a lot of fun. We got to know each other. And at the end of the day, when we were just so tired, we had the joy of meeting a great contemporary speaker, and that's C.L. Bryant, who's a pastor. I know the Horowitzes were there, and C.L. Bryant and John was there, and he was incredible. And I had a chance to get a picture of Tom with the pastor, and I wanted to thank him and award him that picture tonight, Tom. Thank you.
I was just pointing out the picture down there with CL. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your help, Tom. It was really incredible. So let me introduce Tom, and Tom's wife, Mary, is here tonight. We're glad she could come and join us. So Tom has been studying American education for 30 years. He shared a lot of stuff with me. While pursuing an independent study of the history of the Buckeye State, he stumbled upon a sentence in the Ohio Constitution that would change his life forever. Religion, morality, and knowledge, however, being essential to good government, it shall be the duty of the General Assembly to encourage schools and the means of education. His shock that the public schools were created to support religion and morality led him on a lifelong, tedious journey. 8 years ago, he published Founding Zealots, Schools Came About and Why They Were What They Were Like. But it also describes in detail how this story has been ignored and distorted by progressive historians that have a different vision for American schools. Tom provides investment advice to individuals for 4 decades. When he's not researching and writing Founding Zealots, he was involved in various political, charitable, and community activities. He remains active in many, many, many things, including schools. And I want to introduce you to my friend, Tom Hagedorn. Tom, welcome. Glad you could be here. And I've got your...
Terrific. Thank you, Dan. Dan mentioned the book Founding Zealots. I have a special offer for you. I've done a pretty significant reduction in price. They are available. They will be available afterwards. I have a 100% discount tonight, so they are free. If you're interested in the history of the public schools, or if you know a teacher, I can guarantee you they were not taught this at Teachers College. They were not taught this history. That is correct, but at any rate, pick one of those copies up when you get. Well, I sort of feel like I'm on a fool's errand here, and I think I'm a good person for the job. I'm going to try to go through 238 years of history of American schools, not the universities, the schools, in less than 20 minutes. So let's see how I do. You don't have to sing. I think that's enough of that, right? The Communist International. Okay, scary stuff, but you know, Halloween's coming, so why not? Why'd I do it? Because I can. Okay, so let's do this quickly. And I want you to notice though, at the top, the section heading is dark blue. So that kind of stands for the founders. And as you watch this, you're going to gradually see it go to a lighter blue, to a gray, all the way over to the dark red of communism. So what was the founders' visions for education, and how did they carry it out? So it really started way back in 1783 with Washington, actually. It really wasn't completed until the end of the Civil War. They didn't actually have public schools until the end of the Civil War. But Ohio's first constitution gives you kind of similar to what Dan read. I'll read it, quote, "Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of instruction shall forever be encouraged." So note those words in the same sentence: religion, morality, knowledge, and government. I mean, when I first read that, I thought, what? This is public schools? I don't know. I don't get it. So that sent me on this 20-year journey to try to learn how that could get in there. So the founders. So as far as our national founders, there were a number of them that really were not traditional Orthodox Christians. But this is out of the first maybe top 10 leaders. But when you looked at the top 100, top 200, most of them could be defined as Orthodox Christians, and they definitely all used Christian principles. Even Thomas Paine, who was an atheist, used Christian imagery when he wrote some of his most famous writings. So it was mostly ministers, primarily Presbyterian and Congregational, and these were typically the best educated people in a community. Almost no one went to college, right? These were educated people. Typically, they were Puritan or had a Puritan background. So, you know, think New England. What was their assumption about mankind and about children? Their assumption was that, you know, mankind was not evil, but it was a fallen world, right? After Adam and Eve, it's a fallen world. And so children the same. So that basically they looked at children as really needing a lot of direction, or they can go astray pretty quickly. They needed a lot of direction and a lot of discipline. And that was their assumption about mankind and about children. It was kind of a pessimistic view that we need a lot of self-control for sure in a democracy. So what was the purposes of the first schools? It was actually, these are ministers, right? So it was actually evangelization and discipleship first, and then academics. And they definitely had very good academics, but the religious purposes were taught right along with the academic. It was a very long, difficult struggle. It was led by these ministers and many devout lay people. It went from, and this is nationally now, it went from the 1820s, and really most of their job was completed by the end of the Civil War. In most states that were states at the time, in 1865, you know, we did have some form of public school. Does anybody here own any McGuffey's readers? Okay, I see a couple hands. All right, they're everywhere. These readers are everywhere today because they were everywhere in the 19th century. This was the primary textbook that was used. If you ever get an access to that, open one up and look at all the moral lessons that are, it's obvious that, you know, people of faith were deeply involved in education back then when you look at those McGuffey's readers. And by the way, that was the curriculum, because teachers were not really, there was basically no teacher training, so that basically the students memorized the textbooks, and so that was the curriculum. Okay, so then, no, went the wrong direction. All right, so then 1865, enter the professional administrator. So now we've got a new assumption about the schools and about how they should work. And the new assumption was that professionalism will improve education. So in came the idea of what they called normal schools. Normal schools were 2 years of training. Teachers got 2 years of training. Eventually, by the end of the 19th century, they moved on to 4-year colleges. They became 4-year colleges, teachers' colleges. They were strictly for educating teachers. And superintendents came onto the scene. So superintendents were always male, and they were basically in charge of the school, and they were supervising all the teachers, who were almost 100% young female teachers. Typically, when back then, just culturally, when a teacher married, she went home and raised a large family, usually. Boards of education came in. So the boards of education set very detailed policies for the superintendents. They were on a short, these superintendents were on a short leash. And the boards of education members actually went into the classrooms to observe. They wanted to see, they wanted to make sure that their policies were being carried out. They were really hands-on. We started to see compulsory schooling, where it started off with just a minimum number of days, because, you know, they had to fund this. This was expensive, right? We all know that it's expensive. So, you know, the number of days that were required each year seemed to increase in different states, and also the number of years of education that were required increased as well. And we also began to see graded schools. You know, you've heard about the one-room schoolhouse, where, you know, you've got a 4-year-old being educated in the same room as a 16-year-old, and the teachers had to juggle all this. Of course, they did it with the books, right? The book was the curriculum, so it wasn't all that terribly hard. And the kids basically were memorizing the stuff. So we got into graded schools, where instead of that approach, where once you mastered the first level, you moved to the second, and you moved to the third when you mastered that. And if somebody was younger than you or older than you but hadn't mastered that, they were still back there learning, you know, that level before they could move on. Graded schools don't work that way. You know, if you're ahead of somebody or behind somebody, you know, it's kind of teaching to the lowest common denominator in a way. You know, it's most of them are gonna pass. High schools came in during the 19th century, late 19th century. Now, they were added gradually, and it was not the norm for somebody to go to high school. If you have a grandparent or great-grandparent, and you hear a story, oh, they only had an 8th grade education. Well, hold on a second. An 8th grade education 100 years ago, in some ways, you could equate to a high school, you know, a 12th grader these days, in terms of some of the curriculum. Okay, moving on, and notice the change in color as we move up to the next. Now wait, oh, there we go, sorry. There we go, I'm getting my two things. All right, now we're into the gray. We light blue, now we're gray. Enter the progressives in 1900. So now we have a new assumption. This is based on what's called social Darwinism. Worth your time to look that up on Wikipedia, social Darwinism. But this was the idea that man can improve himself. It's just a, you know, survival of the fittest, and man is on this continually progressive progression towards, let's say, perfection. So progressives gained a lot of power during this period of time, the 1900 to 1920, and it really affected the schools quite a bit. This weakened the founders' assumption about man a great deal. And because, you know, the founders had this more pessimistic view, the progressives had a more positive view of man and of the child, that the child needed less supervision. Middle schools came in between grade schools or grammar schools and high schools. And now here's something significant. Power was shifting away from the school boards over to the superintendents. So the superintendents they weren't on that short lease anymore. They had a lot more latitude. The school board was not as close of a supervisor as they were. Teachers were gaining more power and autonomy. And the bureaucracy was starting to be built into the schools. People that were just there, that were shuffling paper and making rules and writing curriculum, but not teaching anybody. So curriculum, what is taught, and pedagogy, which is how it is taught, began to move away from the founder's vision over to the progressive vision. And here we go. So, went in the wrong direction. All right, enter the lovers of Marxism. Marxism, 100 years ago, John Dewey, recognized by almost anybody that studies this as the father of modern American education. He was a socialist, he was a humanist, he was one of the initial signers of the Declaration of Humanism, whatever that document is called. And he was also a real admirer of Stalin. In fact, he traveled of American leftists to Russia in the late 1920s, got to meet with Stalin. Very glowing things about the Soviet education system, the Soviet schools, and also about Soviet communism in general. Thought this was really just doing great. His partner in crime was a man named George Counts. He may have actually been more influential on American education than John Dewey because he lived a lot longer. Anyway, George Counts said that education's purpose was to change society through politics. University. So the Frankfurt School socialists were mixing with the Dewey and Counts and friends in the college of, in the Teachers College at Columbia. Interestingly enough, Ohio State University laboratory school, this was a radical experiment in Ohio. Right here in Columbus, they tried out a progressive school up there in Columbus. So what was this all about? This was about an education for a socialist future. And the plan was that they were going to teach one generation at a time. And so transform America that way. This was following the plan of a man named Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci was an Italian communist. And he developed this plan in the 1920s. He called it the Grand March Through the Institutions. So it was a very intentional, gradual, slow movement to replace capitalism with socialism, not just in the United States, but around the world, because that is the socialist plan, to have one world government, one socialist government. That was Marx's plan. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if I'll pronounce his name right, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, current head of the Department of Transportation. His father was an academic his whole life, most of those years at Notre Dame. And he had one child, Pete, and his sole research interest was Antonio Gramsci. This man spent his whole life studying Antonio Gramsci. You don't do that unless you really like the guy and you're really interested in him and you want to see his plans do well. So this is where Pete Buttigieg got his political training. So Abraham Lincoln could see this coming, not this specifically, but he knew the importance of education. He said that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of government in the next. How true? Sadly, how true. Okay, so what happened next? Well, we had this little thing called World War II, didn't we? And then we had a lot of, the 1940s were really, the Marxists didn't make much outward progress then. And even in the 50s, they didn't. And you'll notice it now, we're turning to red, right, at the top. So Marxists quietly heat the water of education from 1950 to 1960. So how do you boil a frog? All right, I'm told that you can put a frog in a pan of lukewarm water on the stove and slowly, ever slowly turn that heat up very, very slowly so that the frog doesn't notice it. And apparently, I'm told that when it's boiling, it's too late. The frog didn't notice it and the frog is cooked. And that's kind of what the socialists have done to our educational system. They've done it very slowly and quietly. So in 1950, the Supreme Court and educators had already removed prayer and Bible reading from the schools, which were pretty much the norm, even in public schools. I've had, people older than me tell me that they did both in their public school. But World War II and anti-communism had forced socialists into a quiet period. There's a lot of anti-communism then, and they were afraid to sort of, come out of the closet and be called a communist. So they worked on the sidelines, but they still made progress. The space race with the Soviet Union drove federal funding of state and local education for the first time. Teachers and their unions showed the first signs of power, and progressives took control of the teachers' colleges. So they were training, in the 30s, they were training these PhDs, spread them all over the country. And in 20 years, they were probably at UK and UC, University of Iowa, and University of Southern California. They were all over the country in the 1950s. And here we go. Here's where they really started winning in some of the schools. And so Marxists bring that water of education to a boil from 1960 to 2000. So, and this happened very quickly in the 60s. First of all, the Great Society began to perform. That was Lyndon Johnson, all the legislation there began to transform America. There was a huge expansion of federal involvement in the schools, huge growth of teachers' unions. And in the 60s, the progressives took control of city or urban schools. In the 70s, they had moved out. They took control of suburban schools. 1980, the Federal Department of Education was created. In the 80s, they took control of rural schools. In the 90s, by the 90s, all schools were promoting. Now, it was not blatant. You had to look. You had to be careful. You had to look at the words. You had to look at the nuance. It wasn't right out there. I mean, if you look at, you're not going to find critical race theory, those words in any textbook, but that theory is everywhere in the schools. It's everywhere. You just won't read those words. So you won't read socialism and communism a lot back there in the 70s and 80s, but it was there. So by the 90s, all schools were promoting leftist beliefs, ignoring the traditional beliefs of the founders. So Dewey and Counts' vision that education for a socialist future was now in place. So what happened next? Surely somebody's fighting back against this, right? Surely somebody notices. Well, actually not. The last 21 years, the Republicans and Democrats have basically been joining forces. All right, 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act. George Bush and Teddy Kennedy basically, they put it together. George Bush and Teddy Kennedy. Does anyone think that Teddy Kennedy is gonna sign off on a law that doesn't promote a lot of his progressive liberal ideas. 2010, we got the Common Core Initiative. This was a voluntary national curriculum standard where basically the federal government bribed 41 states, including most of the red states, with huge grants of money if they would give up their state control of the curriculum and accept this federal curriculum. We have a federal curriculum in our local schools. And the Republicans gave it away. They gave it away voluntarily. Every state had to pass a law. Ohio had to pass a law to put Common Core in, and they did. Ohio State controlled by Republicans. So 2010 to 2021, we've seen race, gender, sexual orientation, transgender identity, economic status, et cetera, all these things that are being taught as divisive ways in many of our schools to divide us. And what's the purpose? Go back and read the Communist Manifesto. They want to divide and destroy the American experiment. And they are well down the road to doing just that. We've seen it here in Ohio. Ohio State Board of Education in 2018 approved a 5-year plan for the state schools that was written by the new superintendent of schools. Number one goal was it excellence in education? Nope. Number one goal was equity. They're explicit in the plan to explain that what they mean by equity is essentially equal outcomes for all students, irregardless of their effort, irregardless of their ability, equal outcomes for all students, equity. And of course, Dan and I are very familiar with this. In 2020, Ohio State Board of Ed passed Resolution 20 that mandated critical race theory in all of our, in the State Board of Education, and highly recommended it in all of our schools, and gave money and kind of put pressure on all the schools to start teaching these divisive, critical race theory things. And this was passed in a state with a Republican governor, a Board of Education that was, and legislature that's completely controlled by Republicans. And now, while they have done some good things, they repealed it, but the legislators are refusing to follow through and pass a law to outlaw it. And you know why? If all you have to do is Google their contributions. The Ohio Education Association, OEA, if you look at that, that is the teachers union, 125,000 members strong. They're a huge contributor to a lot of the people that we elect to office that we're hoping will stop this. They're not going to stop it. As long as that money keeps flowing, they're not going to stop it. Education transformed for a socialist society. I'll skim through this kind of quickly because I want to learn about the backyard birds. So I'm going to skip through this a little bit. I won't, I talked to you before about the founder's vision, but I just need to explain what the progressive vision was. The progressive vision was that we can make the world, they can make the world better, eventually turn it into a socialist utopia. Children can learn much on their own just by having access to knowledge. Teachers are more like coaches or partners, not instructors. And this is true. This is what they're doing. They even use the word colleague. They don't use any sort of a hierarchical reference to the teacher. Every student is a part of this new society and is a member of several identity groups. Some of these groups are deemed good and some are bad. What are the obstacles to the socialist utopia, which is very close to us? Marriage, the family, middle or upper income economic classes, Christianity, and they're explicit about this in the training materials to teachers, capitalism, and any oppressive group according to race, sex, etc. So, in conclusion, all right, what's the only solution? Just my opinion, I'm sorry, get your kids and grandkids, until these are fixed, get your kids and grandkids, if you can, out of the public schools now. If you dig in and learn what they're being taught, it's pretty frightening. So maybe someday they'll come back, but it's going to take a while. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Got time for one quick question for Tom. Anybody have a question they want to ask? I thought, Tom, you gave a great history of where we've gone, and you can pick up one of Tom's books out on your way up, and there aren't enough for everybody. So just if you're with somebody, please just take one. And those are on the counter, Tom?
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you very much. Tim Coates, we're glad to have Tim with us tonight. He opened Wild Birds Unlimited in Forest Park in October 1995. He's grown into the largest store to include not only fresh, no filler seeds and seed blends, but also state-of-the-art feeders, houses, bird baths, and exclusive advanced pole systems. There's a huge assortment of backyard birds, field guides, garden art, and wood chimes. Additionally, the store includes an entire squirrel department. Now I live in Glendale. Is there a black squirrel department too? Or excellent. Tim was raised in Illinois farm country, attended University of Indianapolis, and arrived in Cincinnati via Federated Department Stores. He's created a welcoming atmosphere at his store in which to browse and relax while enjoying a complimentary cup of hot tea, coffee, cider, or hot chocolate. We're just really glad to have Tim with us tonight, and I hope to learn something about how to watch birds. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. Did everybody get one of these? Does anybody not have one of these? Okay, I want to empower you, Nita, and I have two. I've been, believe it or not, I told I will pay to get them out of public school. Ready to go with that. The topic of backyard birding seems a little less serious than that is, and that's something to be watching for. So, all right, how many people here have heard me speak before? One person. I thought maybe I'd get away with 0 this time. I give a lot of talks. How many people here feed their backyard birds? Wow. For those of you online, if you didn't catch that, it was almost everybody. All right, watch this. This is really going to be the embarrassing part here. How many people here do not feed their backyard birds? 2 hands, 2 brave souls. Why do I ask that question? If you think I'm going to sit here and make you, oh, he's going to make me feel guilty. He's going to make me feed the birds. I don't want to feed the birds. Don't worry. People are often surprised to hear me say that backyard bird feeding is just a wonderful hobby, isn't it? The birds have actually done very fine without us for thousands of years, haven't they? Okay. Now, some of us like the song. We love the antics. We love the color. We love the insect control, which a lot of people don't even think about when they think of birds. But if you build your bird population up in your backyard, you got a great deal of insect control going on out there. So don't feel guilty. If you don't want to feed your birds by the time I'm done, you don't have to. It's okay. How many people have been to my store? Oh, a good handful of people. Yeah, I thought I recognized a lot of faces here. Kemper and Witten. If you like cats and fireplaces and hot chocolate, you don't even have to buy anything. You just can come in and sit down and have a good time. Yes, this is the heated bird bath right here that you won. This, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I think you're going to like that. I've sold thousands of those in 26 years. What is the date today? 18? In about 8 days, we're going to be celebrating our 26th anniversary in Forest Park as a Wild Birds Unlimited store. We're not doing anything special, but oh, thank you. You're very kind. All right, for those of you who have heard me speak before, you might remember that in the middle of my talk, when I think you're getting sleepy, I'll ask a bird question. And if you get the answer right, you win a book. Retail value, $3.99. So be on your toes. We'll ask some questions here and we'll see if we got any really, really sharp birders in the room. I already talked to several people who have bird feeders, so maybe they know the answers. All right, when somebody like me talks, we always talk about 4 basic things. And if we don't do those very, very quickly, it'll get very, very boring. So we're going to go through those very, very quickly. And you may have heard these before: food, water, shelter, and cover, right? But there's some things in those categories that a lot of people don't truly understand. And number 1 right off the bat is food. Let's ask this question. How many in your backyard, what is the number 1 seed you can feed your birds in your backyard? Sunflower, black oil sunflower, always your number 1 seed. You can feed that all day long. They'll eat every last one. Striped sunflower is just about as good. There's a little white seed called safflower, which we may talk about a little bit later. That's an excellent seed. Now, here's the big secret to birdseed, and there is a big secret to birdseed. The big national commercial seed companies that bag for people like Lowe's, Home Depot, Kroger, Menards, feed mills, I don't care where you go, invariably ladle into their bags tons and tons and tons of little tiny, ugly, heavy, nasty yellow or red filler seed. The birds don't want it. They sit there and flick it out of the feeder all day long, trying to get past them to find the 1 or 2 seeds they really want. Why do these companies do it? It's cheap seed. It's heavy. Makes you think you're getting a great buy for 20 pounds, and sometimes up to half of it can be pure waste. I have seed in these bags. Feed wheat, oats, flax, rye, buckwheat, barley, Milo, canary, the list goes on and on. It's garbage. It is literally dishonest what they're doing. So here's the secret to birdseed. There's only one little tiny yellow seed that's got any value in your backyard, and that's good white Dakota millet, sometimes called white proso millet. If you like feeding your tree sparrow, song sparrow, chipping sparrow, fox sparrow, white-throated sparrow, white crowned sparrow, juncos in the wintertime, mourning doves, rufous towhees, white millet is an excellent seed, and I like a little white millet in my backyard. But even red millet will get kicked out. We won't use the red millet in our stores. So any Wild Birds Unlimited store, any bag of seed you buy anywhere in these stores, we do not use filler seed at all right? Now here's the kicker. I always tell people this, give me 5 minutes and I'll prove you're not saving money buying cheap seed. I have a guy, this was years ago when this happened. He came in one day and he said, Tim, I have to confess. I said, what's up? He said, I was at Sam's the other day. And I almost knew it was coming because I'm a Sam's customer. He said, at the back of Sam's was this big white plastic PVC-like bucket. And it said quality bird seed, 40 pounds. He said, just like your 40-pound deluxe. He said, it was some ridiculously low price. He said, well, I love the bucket. So he said, I bought it. And I took it home and I filled my feeders, and right off the bat, it didn't look anything like yours. And after a day or two, I realized the birds were flicking this stuff out of the feeder onto the ground, and they never did that with yours. And I said, okay, no big deal. I'll go back and get Tim's 40-pound deluxe, but at least now I have the bucket. So he said, I finally got through that garbage, my word, not his, most of which was on the ground. He said, I came back, got your 40-pound deluxe, all happy, big smile on my face, took it home, ripped the top of the bag open, poured it in the empty bucket. The bucket filled up to the top, overflowed, and spilled out all over my garage. Now this he did say because it tickled me. I remembered to this day. He said, Tim, I thought I was in the Twilight Zone. It's a 40-pound bucket, it's a 40-pound bag. What am I missing here? He said, then I remembered what you told me about that little tiny, ugly, heavy filler seed. He said, Tim, not only do they eat your seed, but I can get 16, 18, 20 more fills in my feeder. With your 40 pounds that they'll eat, then I can on that garbage they won't eat in the first. I said, if I can get that on a TV commercial, which I swear someday I'm going to do, I'll get people to understand you are not saving money buying cheap seed. All right, does that make sense? All right, so those are the 4 seeds right there are the 4, what I call the 4 key seeds: black oil sunflower, striped sunflower, safflower, and a little bit of the good white Dakota millet. Now, people say, what about cracked corn? Cracked corn is not a bad seed necessarily. You don't want to use a lot of it. It has a tendency to draw some of the blackbirds, but they'll eat the cracked corn. It's not a bad seed really either. But when we think of finches, who are we thinking of? What seed? Thistle. Thistle, which really isn't thistle, it's Niger. Niger isn't grown in the US. It's grown in places like Burma, Indonesia, Thailand, Ethiopia. It is shipped here in large boats where legally it can only be accepted in 2 specific US ports, where immediately it's processed, sterilized, and then transported across the country. Why do I tell you all that? Thistle is highly perishable. If it gets old, the finches will not touch it. Wherever you buy your thistle, you always have to ask, is this fresh? Do you rotate your stock? When did you get this in? I can tell you horror stories of people buying very expensive bags of thistle, and they bought a very expensive bag of dust. I mean, there was literally nothing left. Thistle is an oil-based seed, and that oil over time just evaporates right through the shell into the atmosphere until you have shell. Looks like thistle, there ain't nothing left in it anymore. You can always tell a thistle feeder because it has the tiny, tiny holes. I don't have the perches in this right now, but you got the tiny, tiny holes on the thistle feeder. There also was a mesh type feeder that a lot of people like. They sell about 50-50. This is one of our lifetime guaranteed feeders that we have at the store. 10 perch, and look at this. The quick release, easy remove bottom for easy cleaning. Most of you probably don't know how cool that is, but I tell people, you know how many decades I tried to get to the bottom of a tube feeder with a bottle brush and try to get it clean? Now it is this easy to get it clean, okay? Plus, you see how that plastic is foggy? That foggy you see there is silver ion coating, interior coating. Why in the world would anybody silver ion interior coat a feeder? Silver ion is nature's antimicrobial, antibacterial. Mold, mildew, fungus cannot grow around silver ion. We worked for over 2 years with a company called Aegean to get this done. All Aegean does is silver ion coat things for different industries, primarily the medical world. A lot of equipment gets shipped to doctors' offices and hospitals completely silver ion coated. It keeps the entire hospital cleaner. It's permanent. It won't wear down. It won't wear off. It is like magic. That's very cool. And see, this is your traditional feeder with the larger holes for like the regular seed. So I've got one of each in my backyard, a match set. A lot of people do that. All right. So we've done finches, house finch, purple finch, goldfinch, right? They love the thistle. I used to call finches wild canaries when I was a kid. I mean, that's what they look like, right? One of my favorite birds. All right, so what birds are we missing here? We've got, I always think of birds in 3 food categories. Your seed-eating birds, number 1, that's chickadees, tufted titmice, house finch, purple finch, goldfinch, cardinals, blue jays, nuthatches, right? On and on, your sparrow families. Second category, suet or peanut-eating feeder birds. Whenever you think of suet or peanut, who do you think of? Woodpeckers, exactly. This is a peanut feeder. I've talked to many people who've never heard of a peanut feeder. More birds like peanuts than you can shake a stick at. Right off the bat, you think of all your woodpeckers. Downy, hairy, red belly, flicker, yellow belly, sapsucker, pileated, redheaded. We have about 7 in this part of the country. The first 3 or 4 are very easy to get in your backyard. In fact, I was just at Winton Woods this afternoon. There was a red belly going right up the tree in front of my truck when I was parked there. We need to do a question, don't we? We need to give a book away. We're going to see how many people are still awake. Okay, here's a question. Don't we love these guys? That's not the question. Papa, Mama, right? All right, this is for a book. Are you ready? Just shout the answer out if you know the answer. Here's your question. How does Papa Cardinal win his mate? Who said that? You did. Very good. You were half a second behind. I'm sorry. Did you hear what she said? He feeds her. If you look in the springtime, you will see Papa, and he will take a very special black whale sunflower seed from your feeder, and he will fly up to the branch where his hopeful mate-to-be is waiting, and he will pass it to her beak to beak. And if she takes it and eats the meat inside, that means I'm yours. But if she throws it on the ground, that means take a hike, jerk, you're out of here. All right. And for you, we have Birdwatchers Digest, enjoying cardinals more, attracting cardinals to your yard, watching cardinal behavior. Give her a nice round of applause for getting that right. Pass that over to her. All right, now you know how the game is played. You'll be ready for the next question, right? All right, let's talk about water first. Oh, there is one little bird we haven't mentioned yet, isn't there? They just left. Hummingbirds. Don't we love the hummingbirds? All right. How many people heard me on Brian Thomas's radio show the other day? We talked about this a little bit. Let me tell you some things about hummingbirds. I mean, I can tell you all sorts of things about hummingbirds, and we'll talk a little bit later. But when it comes to the feeder, for those of you still using the old bottle type feeders, the bottle's here and the flowers are down here, come by my store. Do yourself a favor. Come by my store. We haven't sold those for so many years, I can't even tell you. We recommend all the saucer-shaped design feeders. Why? If you've got a bottle feeder and the sun hits that nectar or the air pressure changes, the nectar expands, it's got to go somewhere. It seeps out on the end of the flowers. That draws your bees, your wasps, your hornets. I hate that. Of course, if it's not sealed perfectly, it drips. That's what you were saying, right? That's number 1. Number 2, terrible to try to clean. Little parts and pieces and getting pipe cleaners and bottle brushes and stuff up there. And number 3, most terrible for me when I used to use them years ago, if I was on one side and the hummingbird landed on the other side, the bottle was in the way. I don't want the bottle in the way. I want to see my hummingbirds. Saucer-shaped design feeders, the nectar sits in the bottom. It cannot drip. Even if the bees and the wasps and the hornets knew what was in there, it's still a half an inch away from where they can get to it, but a hummingbird can lick this thing dry. His tongue is that long, all right? This easy to get into and rinse out and clean. No little parts and pieces. Built-in ant trap if you need it. And I haven't used mine for years, and there's a reason why. For those of you who heard me on the radio the other day, you already know. And lastly, regardless where those little guys land, you have a perfect view. There's nothing spoiling your view. at all. And this is what I told Brian Thomas the other day, my favorite 12-month-a-year recommendation to people. Pick out the hummingbird feeder you like. And if you have any kind of a window at all, get a suction cup bracket and suction cup it to your window. And I normally carry a suction cup bracket, but I remembered I was down to one and the customer wanted it. So I sold it to her. I sold it out of my box. So I didn't bring it with me. Why do I love suction cups? 3 reasons. Number one, the obvious reason. Hummingbirds are that big. I don't want them out there. I want them here. And they love coming to a window. Don't ask me why. They always have. They love coming to a window. Number two, hummingbirds and other birds, big birds, have nothing in common, don't care to socialize, don't want to be friends. So if your big bird feeders are out there, that's big bird area, hummingbird area at the window, you give them that separation and they really appreciate it. And number three is the really cool advantage. You know, all that is sugar water in there. If the ants find it, the ants are all over it. Hummingbirds hate ants on their feeder. They hate it. Guess what? Ants don't do windows. They don't. I don't think you'll ever see an ant go across a window pane. They just don't do it. So ant traps and ant moats and Vaseline and insecticide and all that Mickey Mouse, why bother? Suction cup it to your window. If you'd have come to my store this summer, I have a suction cup hummingbird feeder right in the alley parking lot of Promenade Shopping Center. I had 6 different hummingbirds coming to that feeder right there in the Promenade Shopping Center this summer. 6 little guys coming all day long. People couldn't believe it. At my house, I have 2 French glass doors that go to my deck. Like a lot of people, that's where I sit in the morning. One door I use all the time. One door I never use. Every year I suction cup it to that deck door. Hummingbirds do not make a mess on a deck like other birds might. And for decades, they've been coming right up on the deck, right to the doors. They peek in to see if I'm there because I'm their pal. I'm the guy that brings the nectar. All right, should we do another question? This is one of my favorites right here. Anybody know this guy? Junco, the Junco, right? Can you see him back there? The Junco. Here's the question for a book. Are you ready? For hundreds of years, this bird was known by an entirely different name. What was it? That's right. One person knew the answer. This is your snowbird. People, everybody's heard of a snowbird. Nobody knows what it is. No, I'm not talking about the people that go to Florida. This is your snowbird, all right? Traditionally, this little guy arrives with the first snowfall of fall, and he leaves at the last snowfall of spring. He only comes in the wintertime. We think of birds migrating south for the winter. Well, he does to us from Canada, and then back to Canada in the summertime, all right? I also had a part-timer years ago that said also because he has that dark gray winter sky on his back and that snowy white underside. Well, when early in the 1900s, the scientists got a hold of this little guy and officially changed his name to Junco, made a lot of people angry. I mean, this was their beloved snowbird. We're talking poetry, we're talking song, we're talking romantic things, you know, about the snowbird and Christmas time and things. And they want to change it to Junco? Are you kidding me? You know that song, the Christmas song, gone away is the bluebird, here to stay is the new bird is the snowbird. That's what he was talking about when he wrote that song. So to this day, the best birders still call this guy the snowbird, and I think you should too. I swear I'm going to start a national campaign to get this little guy's name changed back. And for you, see, we have a good enjoying bird feeding more. Bird food performance chart, expert tips and tricks. Give her a nice round of applause for getting that right. All right, so we've talked about food, including hummingbirds, which is just sugar water, 4 parts water, 1 part pure white table sugar. Next is water, and I'm not going to tell you how essential water is. I'm going to tell you 2 things about water that you might not know. Number 1, all animals instinctively believe that moving water is good water. So if you have any ability to get the water in your bird bath to move, you'll get more birds coming to your bird bath. If you were ever in the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts like I was, they always taught you if you're lost in the woods, you never drink from a still pool of water. You always drink from moving water. Well, animals know that instinctively. So drippers, misters, rock bubblers. The latest thing we sell all the time is called the Water Wiggler. It's battery operated or solar. I have one of the different ones, and it just sits and just spins the water in your bird bath. That's all it does. And it does 2 things. It makes the water look like it's moving. And number 2, mosquitoes can't breed in your bird bath. And a lot of people are figuring out how many trillions of mosquitoes are bred right out of people's bird baths every year. The other thing I'm going to tell you about water is water in winter. And this is where we get the door prize. Liquid water is like gold to birds in the wintertime. Birds have not got the body heat to melt snow or ice. They have to have liquid water. Okay, fine. Even on a snowy winter day, there's a little babbling brook somewhere where they can get a drink of water. But if we get one of those 7 and 10 day periods like we often get, and it's a -5, -10 degrees, 0 degrees, something like that, and everything is granite rock hard frozen, birds can literally start to dehydrate from lack of drinking water with 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. They can't melt it. So heated bird baths or bird bath heaters are wonderful. We sell more heated bird baths than all our bird bath heaters combined nowadays because they're that good. The bath you're getting, this right here, thermostatically controlled, kicks on at about 33 degrees, kicks off at about 35. 4-year warranty. The paper towel, good for a -20 degrees Fahrenheit. We don't get -20, but it's good for that. So it's a really great product. I hope you like it. You're welcome. Glad to do it. All right, let's go on to shelter. Shelter is any kind of a house you want to build for your mamas to, people love wrens. Wrens love people. You put most bird boxes are made with wrens in mind. Put it on a covered front porch, you'll get a wren every time. Put it under the eaves next to a window, you'll get a wren every time. If you want to try to attract a chickadee or a tufted titmouse, you want to put it in the trees. They prefer the trees. We have other bird houses like for woodpeckers and things you can come in and get. But any kind of a little house you want to put out for the mamas to raise babies safely is great. Lastly is cover. Cover is any thickety, brambly, bushy, dense area in the back part of your yard that if you thought you had to try to walk through, you know you'd never make it, right? That dense cover back there is like the Tri-County Mall of the bird world. There's food back there, there's shelter back there, there's protection from wind, storm, rain, hail, protection from predators back there. That is a great place for birds to, be able to take cover when they need to take cover. And some of the little animals too. All right, what are we missing here? Should we do another question? Well, you know what? We got to do this question before it gets too late. You're going to love this. Oh, all right. We already talked about these guys a little bit. This is our ruby-throated hummingbird. Get their name from Papa. Papa's got the ruby throat. Mama does not. All right. The more you study hummingbirds, the more impossible they are. They just should not exist. All right. And I mean that sincerely. But here's your question now. This gets to be the fun part. We got to do this quickly because we got 30 people here tonight. Everybody gets a guess. The person who's closest to the guess wins the book. Are you ready? Listen carefully. How many hummingbird species are there in the world? How many hummingbird species are there in the world? Let's start in the back. Yeah, right back there. Go ahead. How many? 400. 500. 1,000. 800. Dan, you're not going to guess? How many? 700. 200. Everybody's doing the hundreds. I mean, this is like the price. You're supposed to do like 762 and a half. No. Yeah. 50. 1,200. 86. 99. 1,350. See that's a good guess right there. 1,190. I love it.
The price is right.
What was it? 1,250. 2,500. 30. 35. 102. 1,204. 100. 350. 2,900. 950. 850. 20. 650. 450. 420. 375. 750. 2,000. Wow, I thought I was going to get way over here, but this gentleman right here got pretty darn close. There are, to date, that we know of, 361 absolutely, distinctly unique species of hummingbirds in the world. Does that blow you away like it blows me away? If there's only one species of birds that's got more species than that, I think it's swallows. But 361 absolutely distinctly unique species of hummingbirds in the world. All right, how many hummingbird species east of the Rockies? One. Ruby-throated. How many west of the Rockies? 8 to 12. We're very jealous of the West Coast. They have 8 to 12 different species there. Now I'm going to tell you something most people don't know about hummingbirds. You will never find a hummingbird in Europe. It's only North, Central, and South America. Now, will somebody explain that to me? I only have one explanation. The good Lord likes us better. Don't you think that's right? That's the only one I can come up with. 361 known species, and we always say known species because invariably somebody's walking through the jungles of Chile or Ecuador or someplace and we come across a species we've never seen before. Last time it happened was about 15 years ago in Colombia. We added the gorgeted puff to the list. He was the last one, gorgeted puffleg in Colombia, never been seen or documented before until 2005, I think, is when he was discovered. But we're still not sure we got them all right? So it's just absolutely, guys, they have to do the Gulf of Mexico in one trip twice a year. Just amazing. All right. So for you, I'm getting crowded up here. All right. We have, guess what? Enjoying hummingbirds more. 12 species. Give him a nice round of applause for getting that right. He got 375. 375 is pretty darn close to 361. So, all right, listen, I could probably go on forever, but I'll open it up maybe for some questions right now. Does anybody have any questions I can ask?
I've got one to start with.
Fire away.
So I've got a sister who's got a birthday on Friday.
Mhm.
What would be kind of a good kind of introductory present to consider giving her for bird watching?
Yeah, if you want to start her in bird feeding, any
feeding,
good
sorry.
feeder like this would be excellent. You know, something like this is our #1 selling feeder.
Which one did you point
That,
to?
the regular seed feeder, which would be like this. And I do love recommending a seed tray like that. I do not recommend a seed tray for a thistle feeder, but I do recommend them for these. And you're going to get 40 to 50 different birds coming to this, different species of birds coming to this feeder. They're all going to love this kind of thing. On the other hand, I should tell you that we have things like Charlie Harper t-shirts, Charlie Harper coffee cups, nature jewelry, Charlie Harper jewelry. We have wind chimes. We have big cement bird baths. We have all sorts of gift items in the store too. Our primary business is backyard birding, but we have a lot of fun with other backyard nature type things.
Who's
too.
got questions for Tim? We've got one right here.
Fire away.
My name is Karen.
Hi, Karen.
We have, my husband does all the bird feeding and we had a lot of birds last year and then we got a hawk.
Yeah.
And now we've got very, very few birds that
Yeah.
come there. And I just wondered if there's anything you can do about that.
Hawks normally move on after a little while. They go to better feeding grounds sometimes, and sometimes they stick around for a while. They might even have a nest in your area. But I'd say keep feeding the birds. People are often surprised to find out the best place to put a bird feeder is in the wide open. I used to read years and years ago some old bird books. Put your feeders near cover. Birds love cover. Well, yeah, they love cover. So do the predators who hide in the cover and wait for the birds to land on the feeder. Okay, birds prefer to eat in the open. You get a feeder out in the open. Now the birds have the ability to check the sky for hawks, check the ground for cats. You know, now they feel comfortable eating. So I don't know if your location is someplace where you can get it out in the open where they can get a lot of visibility. Pardon?
In a tree.
Oh, in a tree. Yeah, that's part of the problem. You might try to come and get a pole from us or something, try to get it in an open area of your backyard where they have the visibility. They really like to be able to see around them. That's safety for them. Same thing I tell people with a birdhouse or a bird feeder. If you have a choice between put it at this height or this height and you don't care, put it this height because height is security for birds. Yeah.
This is Betty. Where the hummingbirds that come to this area, where do they come from?
Central and South America. They make the trip twice a year, coming and going. They come right back to the same backyard. Those are your hummingbirds. You know, they know how to get right to the same backyard every year. You get the same ones.
And when do they come?
Last week of April, first week of May is very traditional for Cincinnati. Depending on the year, I'd say 1 out of 4 people get theirs the last week of April. The other 3 out of 4 get theirs the first week of May. I always put my hummingbird feeders up on tax day. That's early, April 15th, but it's easy to remember. And I leave it up till Halloween. That's late, but I'd rather have it there in case a little guy is zipping down from his backyard from Dayton or Toledo or even Canada, and he spots that feeder, he can get a big charge up to continue his trip with.
What's the lifespan of a hummingbird?
Last one?
What's the lifespan?
Well, lifespan, people ask me that all the time. I always smile because The general consensus is 4, maybe 5 years tops. And I've never bought that. I've never believed that. That's what the experts say. Now, I don't know why I didn't believe it. I just think they live a lot longer than that. Now, how do you tell? Well, the only way to tell how long a hummingbird's lifespan is in the wild is to misnet it, put a little tag on its leg, and then get lucky enough to misnet it down the road somewhere. All right. Well, that happened in Colorado. They misnetted a little female hummingbird in Colorado, and she had a tag on her leg from 12 years earlier. I said, see, I knew it. I knew they live longer than 4 or 5 years.
Who has questions for?
Yeah,
for
we don't really know for sure.
Jim?
But
Right here.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Barb. I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
For a while this summer, there was some disease that was hitting if you fed them with bird feeders. Is that still a problem?
No, and it never was.
Oh,
This group of any group should know. You never take anybody's word for anything about anything until you research it and check it out for yourself. All right. Especially if it's a government agency. All right. Which 99% of the time is going to be wrong. All right. So here's what happened. I knew almost immediately what this was. Every 7 or 8 years, birds start to drop for some strange reason, and the reflexive action by the state, Indiana Department of Natural Resources, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, bring your feeders in. Why? Well, we don't know, but it sounds really smart. All right. They don't have a clue. You have to remember, these people are sitting in front of their computers in high rises in downtown Indianapolis, downtown Columbus. You know, they don't have a clue what's going on out there. They really don't. But they have the state seal next to their name and that really cool title, Department of Natural Resources. It's a little bit too much of a coincidence that this dropping, which was not very much, just a few birds here and there, but enough for us to pay attention, started right when the cicadas hit and in the same states that the cicadas hit. All right. Now, to this day, as of today, we still haven't got a confirmation on this. And there's no confirmation on what was dropping the birds, but most people pretty much knew what it was all from the get-go. What we do know for a fact is there was a handful of people around the country who were hiring outside companies to spray their trees, spray their lawns, spray their shrubbery. They were terrified of these big, ugly cicadas. And those birds were either ingesting the chemicals directly or more likely because they were gorging themselves on the cicadas, were ingesting, 10 or 12 of these poison cicadas and get poisoned in turn. Now, I've been saying that since the day this started. What I didn't know was that the vice president of Birdwatchers Digest, the same people that do these books. Now, you want to know about birds, you ask these people. These people live with the birds, all right? These are sharp people. The vice president is not only a great birder, but she's been a licensed bird rehabilitator for decades. She knows birds, she knows bird illness, she knows bird injury. She has been saying, unbeknownst to me, I just found this out about 3 weeks ago, that she said, first of all, this is a neurological illness. This much we know. She said, a neurological illness immediately tells me that this is a chemical-based problem. She thinks they were eating poison cicadas. I said, see, I've been saying that for 3 months and I didn't know she was saying it. Well, then about 5 weeks ago, Cornell Lab of Ornithology came out and said basically the same thing, even though it wasn't confirmed. They're pretty sure that's probably what it was. And then National Wildlife Federation came out and said the same thing. I never took my feeders in. I had hundreds of phone calls, people calling me, asking me my opinion, which I really appreciate. So this is what I tell every one of these people that called or emailed me. I said, you talk to me, you listen to me, you listen to the state, you listen to other people, you do the research yourself, you make your own decision. That's what smart people do. You don't just take the state of Ohio's word for anything, all right? Or anybody's, not even mine. You do your own research and then you can make an intelligent decision. But I said to people, I know what's in my feeders. My feeders have good, high quality, highly tested food grown in places like North and South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska. If there's any sort of an illness out there in the birding world, that's what I want them eating. I want them to have the strength to be able to fight off an illness. How much sense does it make to bring your feeders in and force the birds to continue to go to the poison? But the state doesn't think of these things. They're just brainless. I'm sorry, they are. They're brainless. And then the news media picks it up and they just parrot whatever the state says, because that's their job. The state says A, they say A. Don't come to somebody like me and ask my opinion.
Tim,
what do I know?
I love a good conspiracy theorist. I knew I was going to like you from the beginning. Who's got a question right
Yes.
here? We've got Mel.
I met Mel in a parking lot and his delightful wife, Jude, who he calls Judy.
What's your thoughts on bark butter?
Wonderful stuff. Great stuff. Jim Carpenter, president, founder, owner of Wild Birds Unlimited, wanted something in his backyard to help bring shyer birds into his backyard, like little brown creepers. Most people have little brown creepers, don't know it. They're a shy bird, little, beautiful, little tiny brown bird. They act very much like nuthatches. Nuthatches go head down a tree, little brown creepers go up a tree, okay? And between the two of them, they catch all the little spider eggs and stuff that the other ones miss. Little curved beak, really cute little bird. Well, he spent years in his own kitchen developing this pasty stuff that eventually he called Jim's Birdacious Bark Butter. And it took another 2 years to figure out how to mass produce it, all right? And they finally got it done, because the trick is, they said, when you put it on your tree, and it's just like it is bark butter. I take it a fork backwards and I smear it on the tree trunk. And before my hand hits the back door, my nuthatches are on the way out. They know what I'm doing. But it couldn't be so soupy that it would come off in strings, and it couldn't be too chunky that it would fall off the tree. I mean, it's really difficult to make that. So they had to make some little chunks come off for the birds, and it's wonderful stuff. I think from coast to coast, we're up to like 189 different species have been known to eat that bark butter, and it's good food. It's good nutrition.
Tim, we have a question online in the
Yeah.
back.
Okay, we have a few questions from online listeners. One person is wondering if you have any thoughts on how to deal with what she describes as crackles and starlings that
Yeah.
keep taking down her feeders.
Yep. A group of birds, starlings, grackles, cowbirds, crows. Most people don't want them in their backyard. My number 2 seller, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to have to say this. My number 2 seller of all the seed I have in my store, my number 1 seller is no mess. We sell more no mess than anything, pure food. But my number 2 seller is straight safflower. Remember that white seed I was telling you about? Safflower is a exceptionally nutritious seed. It's actually part of the sunflower family, which surprises people because sunflower is black and safflower is white, all right? But your cardinals love it, your songbirds like it, your sparrow families like it, mourning doves really like it. Guess who doesn't like safflower? Squirrels and blackbirds don't like safflower. I have hundreds of people that buy nothing but straight safflower. So why am I hesitant? Right now, there's a coast-to-coast shortage of safflower. We get 25 20-pound bags a week. That's all the stores are getting right now. Normally, I order 50 to 60 20-pound bags, not to mention 10 or 12 50s. And every store is being allotted 25 20-pound bags a week, and they go in like 2 or 3 days. They're gone. Even the new crop coming up this fall, they say doesn't look like it's going to help much. But there's a nationwide coast-to-coast shortage of safflower right now. So. But in the future, when it gets back into normal, the safflower is a great way to go.
Here's a person who has heard that hummers are very territorial. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, in Cincinnati, it's very common to see one hummingbird try to attack another hummingbird away from the feeder. And occasionally they'll look in my store and I'll have a video running and it's got like 4 hummingbirds all sharing a feeder. And they go, that never happens. And I go, yes, it does. But here's what you have to understand. In Cincinnati, we get 3 lucky 5 or 6 birds in a backyard. When you have that few, one is going to try to dominate, claim the feeder, guard it, protect it. All right. When you see video of 3 or 4 hummingbirds all sharing a feeder, that's a backyard of 18, 24 hummingbirds. How are you going to defend against 18 other hummingbirds? You ain't going to do it. That's when they all learn to share at that particular point. But in Cincinnati, the territorial thing is a very common thing.
2 more quick questions.
Yeah.
First one, question number 1. What might be the best way to attract orioles? And number 2, person who's never seen a hummingbird is wondering what the odds are that if they put out a feeder, some will show up.
Oh my goodness, the odds are perfect. Right now they're gone, so we have to wait till next spring. But I tell people, if I can get 6 hummingbirds coming to the window of the parking lot alley of Promenade Shopping Center, you can get hummingbirds. Anybody can get hummingbirds. They're everywhere. It's just you have to put a feeder up to actually notice them for the first time. I have a lady that's a customer out of Clifton. She lives in an apartment building 14 floors up. She gets hummingbirds 14 floors up from the street at her window. All right. Anybody can get hummingbirds. You just have to put a feeder on and make sure it's on your window.
And a person was wondering if there's a good way to attract orioles.
Yeah, Orioles. Orioles are kind of few and far between. I put it this way. I have 1,100 people in my daily savings club program. I have a wonderful, if you buy a lot of seed, it's a great program, but I have 1,100 people in that program. I have maybe 40, 45 people with Orioles. All right. That's not a lot out of 1,100 people, but that's 40, 45 Orioles somewhere around the store. All right. So there are a few around. The best thing to do is I tell people, do the cheap thing, go to Kroger, get some oranges, cut them in half, stick them on a nail somewhere where they're highly visible and keep an eye on them. If you see an Oriole come down to that orange, run into my store and buy yourself a $29.99 Oriole feeder. Otherwise, you're probably wasting your money. But that's the easy way. Get a nice big couple oranges out there and see if you can't actually spot them in your area.
We have a question right here.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alicia. The question about cicadas triggered a memory. I had no birds for several weeks before the cicadas showed up.
Interesting.
And then after they showed up, after a while, the birds came back.
All right.
But I had several weeks with no birds. It was the weirdest
It
thing.
might have been a hawk. You might have had a hawk sitting in the tree you didn't
I
notice.
have hawks.
Okay, that might have been it. You know, they can get very skittish about landing on a feeder. You know, going through cicada, I've been in business 26 years. This is the second time I've had to go through the cicadas. And the reason I say that is because my business dropped over 50% for 2 solid months. I knew it was going to happen. The birds just weren't eating the seed. It's tough in business world to go drop 50% for 2 straight months and try to make it through. But I knew it was coming and we planned as best we could.
Other questions
Yeah.
right here.
My name is Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
And I want to know, how do you attract bluebirds?
Bluebirds are a pasture land bird. It's almost impossible to get them in the suburbs. And they need the wide open fields. Ross, Ohio, which isn't that far away from us, is the bluebird capital of the tri-state. They have the floodplain of the Miami River up there. They have all that grassy pasture land. Bluebirds skirt the top of the grasses, waiting for the bugs to come up, grab the bugs, and that's their food supply. Trying to do that in the suburbs or in the woods, not easy. So, you know, it's really, really hard to get bluebirds in the suburbs. But if you live out in the country, pretty easy. Put a few bluebird boxes up, they'll come. Now we're talking bluebirds, not blue jays, right? Yes.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi.
I noticed in mine, when I changed from the regular feeders to platform feeders, I got a lot more birds.
Oh yeah, they love I'm a big fan of platform feeders.
They all come, they all love them.
Yeah, they're simple, they're easy. You can put a ton of seed into them. Your cardinals love them. Okay. Cardinals hate little perches. All right. That's why one of the reasons I love to recommend a seed tray is because now you give those cardinals a nice edge to land on, but they hate little perches. So a platform feeder, one big seed tray type of a thing, and they love that kind of thing. Put some no mess or something in there. I mean, I have window platform feeders, suction cup to your window. It's a platform feeder. I put one on my dad's window. He passed away a couple of years ago, 92, but he was completely bedridden. I put one on his window and filled it with feed all the time. And the birds came right to his window all day. It's a wonderful thing to do for older people who are maybe bedridden.
Any other questions for our speaker
Can I?
right here?
Yeah, and then I'll have a story to wrap it up with if I could.
Yeah, my name is Guy.
Hi.
And I do have birds flying into a large window often. Is there anything you
Yeah,
do on the outside?
we call those deadly windows. The birds think it's fresh air and blue sky. It's just the way the light reflects off of some windows. We have a wonderful product. You're welcome to come and pick some up. It's called Window Alert. They're little electrostatic stickers. You put them on the windows and they contain the ultraviolet spectrum. You and I don't see the ultraviolet spectrum. Birds do. So to us, they look almost invisible on your window, but to the birds, it tells them that it's just brilliant. It tells them something's there other than fresh air and blue sky, and it's a common thing. So yeah, you might want to pick some of those up. All right, let me wrap this up because I have a wonderful story I love to tell you. Normally, a guy like me comes in and they tell you I'm an environmentalist, a naturalist, whatever you want to call me. Platforms, and what they'll tell you is that twice a year they'll be working away and they'll look up and the entire platform is covered in hummingbirds. We've given them a rest stop in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, how cool is this? All right, those oil platforms weren't there 100 years ago. Now they are. All right. Now, experts think most hummingbirds never find as many oil platforms as there are out there. That's a big Gulf of Mexico, and most still have to do that trip. Experts think it takes between 22 and 26 hours of nonstop flight to get from one side of the Gulf of Mexico to the other. They start off at one side with one body weight, and by the time they reach the opposite shore, they have lost over half of that body weight in that one flight. That's why I say the more you study hummingbirds, the more impossible they are. But these oil platforms are out there, and these guys are ready for them. They have dozens of hummingbird feeders ready to go out there in these oil platforms, hanging up, ready to go. So I get this picture of my mind of these big old guys with their yellow hard hats and their oils, and they look up and there's like 500 hummingbirds hanging on their rig, and all these hummingbirds are going, you know, and they have their hummingbird feeders ready to go, and after a while, they take off. So I say, you know, man doesn't screw up all the time. Sometimes we do things that are really, really cool that really help the birds. And feeding the backyard birds is one of them. And having oil platforms in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico is another. You've been a delightful audience. I thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Tim,
Yeah.
before you go, would you, I might have missed it. I had to go out and determine our online winner. Would you explain to everybody exactly where the store is?
Yes, thank you very much. Kemper and Winton are two streets you probably know, Forest Park. All right, there's a Kroger on one corner. That's the west side of the street. I'm on the east side of the street. Now, it used to be easy. I told people right next to FitWorks, but of course, FitWorks is gone now. All right. So I'm right next to an empty building that used to be FitWorks, but I'm at the end cap and I've got an American flag, you know, up in the front, you know, on a post. I've got flowers. I've got a big open feather. So I do whatever I can do to get people to pay attention to the fact that I'm actually there. So you got the Forest Park Municipal Building on one corner, the Mexican restaurant on the other corner, Kroger on the third corner. I'm on the fourth corner in Promenade, but if you look for me, you can find me.
And what are your hours?
10 to 8:30. I'm the only strange store. I go until 8:30 every night. All the other stores in town close at 6. I go till 8:30 Monday through Friday and usually Monday through Saturday. Now, the flip side of that is I'm closed on Sunday.
Good for you.
Thank you. So don't come by on a Sunday. All the other stores are open on Sunday, but because I'm open until 8:30 every night, I'm open more hours in the week than they are.
What a fun presentation. Let's
Wow.
give Tim one more round of
Thank
applause.
you very much.
I wanted to let you all know, Elizabeth C. online, you're the winner of the American Marxism book. It'll be sent to you. I hope you enjoy it. It's a great read. So Thursday night, a serious topic, dementia. I had one of my best friends call me the other day, and he told me that his mother who's been having some problems, just called him and said she'd misplaced some money. And he went over there and spent about 2 or 3 hours trying to help her find it. It was a bad visit for him. And I told him about the class. We've heard the speaker before. She's great. I just encourage you, if somebody in your sphere of influence is having that problem, that you let them know about this class, because it's very worthwhile. Other than that, thank you so much for coming tonight. Go out and empower you. Thank you.
Yeah, this gentleman already won it.
Oh, somebody already won.
Oh, good.
I gotta get my